think this is going to be one of the times that the sermon I give here is completely different from the one I just gave, because new things are coming. So, as we continue to go through the season of Advent, we are now on love. And when we went through so far, we've looked at their differences and complexities. Is that a little better?
Yes.
Okay. Differences and complexities of what we're used to hearing about Advent. We talked about with hope that we couldn't be hopeful for things that already happened, but we're hopeful for Jesus' second coming. We talked about needing faith to have peace, and then we last week talked about the joy that God still gives us, even though we really don't deserve it. And love is the easiest, but it's the hardest. So I was going through thinking of how to express something in a sermon that is so easy, but so hard. I wanted to focus on the signs. So up until this point in history, before Jesus' birth, we know that there were so many prophecies of his coming and what it would be like, and there was hope that this was going to happen. We know that that happens, but I think we have to take a step back for a second. Again, because we live in a world where Jesus has always been, I think that we take that for granted. We talked about how when Adam and Eve were in the garden, they decided that they wanted to be like God. And we know that that decision prevented us from being in the presence of God. Because sin can't be near God. And through this time between Adam and Eve and Jesus' birth, a lot of things have happened. One of the things that I think that we have to really understand about God's love is that it is the only unconditional love you will ever feel in your entire life. Any husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend or anything that's ever said that they love you unconditionally, that's not true. When you tell someone that you love them unconditionally, as much as your intentions are that it's true, it's not. Because there are things that people will do to you that will have you stop loving them. But lucky for us, God's love is unconditional, and there's nothing that we can do to earn it. There's nothing that we can do to lose it. So through this time, God is seeing this creation that he planned to be so good, just being so evil. He thinks he has an idea and he's going to deal with the situation, and he brings the flood and wipes out the earth and thinks this clean slate, we're good here. But then we do it again. And that's, if you read through the Old Testament, that's a history of the people of Israel and history of people in general is we're good when we're supposed to be, but as soon as it gets easy, then we go back to our old ways. So this is going on, and even though there's a prophecy that this child will come, I think we have to understand what this child meant. Jesus' birth was the ultimate love from God. He didn't have to do it. He could have said, I'm done with this. They don't listen. This is just too much. I've given them chance after chance after chance. I've told them what they can and can't do, but they just want to do their own thing. They listen for a little bit and they go right back to what I told them not to do. But God reached to us through Jesus because that was the only way that we could ever be reconciled with him. He gave signs even when times were tough for the people of Israel. Those who continued to have faith and the ones that knew what they should be doing and tried their hardest to do the right thing, they had this hope that this would happen. For others, maybe they didn't have that hope, but what is great about God's love is it didn't matter if they did or didn't. Because God still loved them anyway. It's important to understand that love because we say love a lot. We say love a lot, and I think that word has kind of gotten watered down. But there's also a difference in the word love as well. We know English language is a very hard language for anyone, especially second language learners. This is one of the hardest languages to learn because we have so many different meanings for the same sounds of syllables, there and there, here and here. Those are easy, but love sounds the same, but it means something different. It can be used in so many different things. You may love the summertime. That doesn't mean the same thing as God's love for you. It's not the same love that you have for a child or a family member or a spouse. Those are different types of love. Those are deeper loves, but it's still not as deep as unconditional love. The way that I go through my sermons sometimes, or coming up with them or writing them, doesn't always make sense to me at the time. So when I was going through this, I thought this is going to be an easy one. Love is easy to talk about. So I just felt the Spirit saying, you need to watch this movie. It's like, and it was Signs. If you haven't seen Signs, it was 20 years ago. It came out in 2002. Isaiah was supposed to watch it with me. He didn't watch it with me. So I was like, why am I supposed to watch Signs? What am I going to get from love from this? And if you haven't seen the movie, I'll give you a little synopsis of it. It's basically it's an alien movie, which again, this is why I was thinking about myself, why am I even watching this? What does this have to do with service? But in the story, Mel Gibson's character is, I don't know what he is because they call him father, but he was also married, so he could have been a priest. So I don't know what his denomination was, but whatever it was, he was a pastor or priest or father or some kind of figure like that. And he lives with his two kids and his brother. And this takes place 6 months after his wife is hit in a car accident. She's out jogging and she gets pinned, and it is a scene that I remember so vividly because it's just a strange scene. It was a very powerful scene. I remember seeing it when I was younger. Is the woman is pinned up against the tree, and that's the only thing that's keeping her alive while he comes to say his final goodbyes to her. So at this point in the story, the world is ending. I imagined a little bit how they felt. They were watching on the news these lights appearing in the sky and these aliens that are roaming the earth. I haven't experienced that, but it reminded me very similarly of when we watched September 11th happen on the news, or we watched COVID happening on the news, and you saw in big cities just tractor trailers of where they were putting bodies. And you were like, is this real? This can't be happening. I remember when I got my first COVID shot, I had to get it through the health department, and it was at the racetrack. I don't know if anybody else got theirs at the racetrack, but if you watch any post-apocalyptic type of movies, they had you going through an empty car garage with National Guard everywhere, giving you shots, and there's all kinds of medical tents and everything, and it's like, what is happening? Is this real life? So I say all this because during this scene, Mel Gibson's character and the father and the brother are sitting there. The kids are asleep and they're watching TV and they're watching all of this unfold. And he says something. And for a moment, I thought Boyd got into my head to read, because I didn't write the sermon down. And I was like, how do you know I was going to talk about this stuff? But this is what his character says to his brother. So remember, we're watching live TV and we see aliens are coming, and he says, people break down into two groups. When they experience something lucky, group number one sees it as more than luck, more than a coincidence. They see it as a sign, evidence that someone is up there watching out for them. Group number two, they see those 14 lights in a very suspicious way. For them, the situation is 50-50. Could be good, could be bad, but deep down, they feel that whatever happens, they're on their own. But there's a whole lot of people in group number one, and when they are seeing these 14 lights, they are looking at a miracle. And deep down, they feel that whatever is going to happen, there will be someone there to help them. And that fills them with hope. See, what you have to ask yourself is, what kind of person are you? Are you the kind that sees these signs, that these are miracles, or do you believe that people just get lucky? Or look at the question this way. Is it possible that there are no coincidences? God has decided to show the signs of his love to us over and over again. Further in this story, the next thing that I leave out because it's hard and I think it's true is this former pastor then looks at his brother and says, basically he sums it up and says, in case you're wondering, I'm in group two. We'll just see what happens. He has no faith. He had just lost his wife 6 months ago, and that's where he was. It's a 50-50, and I don't feel there's anybody here for me. And through the story and through the movie, there's a little girl, and she drinks water. But she only takes a sip of the water, and then it's contaminated. So it might have dust in it, or somebody breathed on it, or somebody else drank out of it, or it has amoebas in it, or whatever she said. There was all these reasons that there were tons and tons of glasses just everywhere in the house. And at the end, the aliens kind of destroy everything, and they're at this moment where there's an alien trying to get into the house. And up to this point, what we've heard from him is he used to believe, but now he doesn't believe. And then what happens is, as these aliens, where we can not look at them as aliens, we can just look at them as hardships in life, start beating down the doors and busting the windows trying to get into the house, he's left in the situation where he was just talking about. Do I believe that there's anybody out there to help me? Or am I on my own here? And what happens is he's around his brother and his kids, and at that moment he kneels down that I remember very vividly, he kneels down to his son, and he does it to his daughter, and he talks about the first time when they were born. With his daughter, he talks about how she looked and how big her eyes were, and for his son, he talks about how his mother wouldn't stop bleeding and they were rushing around. But what he did is, in all of the chaos, and remember, in the scene, aliens are beating down the door about to come inside the house, and he stops everything And he kneels down to his kids and he has this conversation with them because I believe in his mind he feels that this is the last conversation. But for someone who didn't believe that anybody was there for them, he was there for someone. He didn't let his kids not believe that there wasn't someone there. And towards the end, because this movie was called Signs, what ends up happening is these aliens are allergic to water for whatever reason, and the brother used to play baseball, and he's swinging a bat to knock this alien down, and all those cups of water all of a sudden come into handy because he's smashing cups in the water, it gets all over the alien, and the end of the story, it just ends kind of the end. We don't know what happens to the rest of the world. But it reminds me of just the signs that sometimes we miss. The father, through the story, had been hurt. He had blamed God for some hurt. And thought, well, if you let this happen, then you don't love me. You don't love anybody. He ignored the signs. There was a scene where he's picking up, there's a police officer at the house, and he's explaining this alien that he saw. And he's going through the house because he's trying to straighten it up. And he's picking up these cups of all the water, and he looks over, and there's just like 3 more cups, and he just puts the other ones down. He's like, okay, there's too many cups. I can't even pretend to clean this up. And those were a nuisance to him. He didn't understand why his daughter did it. She did it from the time that she was born. And then he remembers his wife when she was passing away. In his mind, it was just fleeting memories as her body and brain were shutting down, but she had said to tell the brother to swing away. So when he does that, the Mel Gibson's character just says this was all just the body shutting down. She was just remembering things. Didn't matter. But then when it counted, those were signs that God had given him that were used later. He remembers he then tells the brother, swing away, as he takes the kids out of the house and the brother is left in there to fight this alien. All the things that he thought were nuisances, all the things that he didn't think were signs of God's love, were there when he needed them to be there. Much like the story that Lloyd told this morning of there's no such thing as being in the right place at the right time. You're where God wants you to be. And sometimes those places aren't fun places. Sometimes those places are painful and sad and grieving places. But sometimes we have to get through those places to get to where God is telling us to go. Sometimes the small things that you think that you were doing that don't matter, do matter. For the woman that he ended up taking to the hospital, I'm sure that day she was thinking, well, how am I going to get there? How is this going to happen? How is that going to happen? On top of all the stress that she already has. But God provided a way. The food that you donate, the toys that you donate may seem like a small thing to you, but the things that are in these stockings are going to mean the world to some people this holiday season. God has given us the ability to be loved, but even more importantly, to love. There are so many people that are not in here because they feel that there is no one that loves them. Maybe they've been to jail. Maybe they're in jail. Maybe they've had an abortion. Maybe they've been divorced. Maybe they've been on drugs. Maybe they've had a hard go or made some mistakes. They don't feel like anybody can love them. There's some people this morning that are sitting in pews across the world that are trying to go through the motions but still feel that because of their own skeletons in the closet that they really can't get close to God because they haven't done enough yet and they haven't earned God's love yet. So they keep that distance. Like we talked about, God's love is unconditional and there is nothing you've done to deserve it. But there's nothing that you can do to have it go away from you. Before you were born, God loved you. And what is so frustrating about this season for me and talking about love is that it should feel good, but we have so many people today that will be sitting in pews and talking about how they're Christians and they follow what God tells them to do, but they are very hateful people. And if God is love, and you don't love other people regardless of their situation, how can you say that? If that's the case, if you come here and you hate people so much for any number of things, that should be a time to do some evaluation on yourself. I saw something the other day and it said, your faith should be challenging you about yourself, not allowing you to condemn others. So if you use your faith to browbeat people and say they should do this, they should do that, that's fine. But we can turn the mirror around and talk about the things that you could do. What's frustrating to me about this time of the year, and we talk about love, is that it is something that we were given freely, but yet we are so stingy with. I deserve God's love and forgiveness. That person doesn't. They did this. They still do that. Jesus, to me, made it very clear. He had choices to make. Yesterday, me and Isaiah were at Sandy Hook doing some final touches on decorating for Christmas, and we took pictures of their stained glass, and they go through the story and the life of Jesus. So for 33 years, Jesus knew who human beings were. Nasty, hateful, spiteful creatures. Remember, it wasn't a stranger that betrayed Jesus. It was one of his 12, the ones that he kept so close. And as he sat in the garden before he knew what was going to happen, he prayed. And I think that is the first time we ever see human Jesus. Up to that point, we've heard a lot of the miracles that Jesus was doing. But at this point, we saw Jesus be a person when he asked God to let this pass from him to someone else if possible. Now, I don't think in his mind he was thinking, these wretchful things, I don't want to die for them. But maybe I think I would have. Remember, this is hours after he knows that he's going to be betrayed by who? The same person who's laughing and smiling in his face. He knows what's going to happen. But he still chose. His love made him choose us over himself. He chose to do that for Judas, the same as he did for Peter, the same as he did for you, for all the things that you've done wrong, that you weren't even born for yet. That's unconditional love. And I want you to think, you hear all this stuff of this war on Christmas at Starbucks and all these other places because they say happy holidays and whatever, and if that riles you up, I'm sorry. But I want you to think about something different. I want you to go through the rest of this week and try something a little bit different. If we agree that God is love, and we agree that the beginning of our reconciliation with God happened Christmas morning, then maybe instead of being upset if someone says happy holidays to you, not to say Merry Christmas, I challenge you throughout the rest of this season to change what Christmas really means. When you see someone, instead of saying Merry Christmas, let's just try saying, I love you. Amen?
Amen.
Isaiah, can you come up for our reading?